in the Maritimes with some friends for my whole birthday week, but I am here celebrating good books with you. So that makes it still lovely to be with so many people. I mean, we're now up to 85 people today. I know there are some new people joining us, so welcome to you. Sharon, you are a
loyal,
excellent reader. You're you love to study literature, and you are an example of sort of digging in and thinking it through and participating.
Thank you.
So no, thanks to you, Sharon. Big thanks to our sponsor today, Sharon. Sharon,
can I say one more thing?
Yes,
please. I think what I have benefited from beyond all the many wonderful books that have been recommended is that you have helped us navigate through this pandemic. If that is something that you believe was an initial goal or perhaps one, it definitely had a huge impact on my life, but also your wonderful upbeat manner. I don't know how many people might have told you this, but it helps. And the generosity of spirit, it's just fantastic. We have a year full of great discussions, but also wonderful books. So thank you.
Thank you so much. You know, when I started, I didn't think it would turn into this. And the benefits of it, and you know, thank you for saying that, Sharon, but the benefits to me have been enormous. As I've said before, it has not been an easy year for me. I've had my losses, but to have all of you and to have a purpose, right? We all need purpose. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later when I talk about one of the books. We need purpose. We need something, you know, so this is something I could count on to give shape to my week. And here we all are together again. And, you know, as our numbers rise today, and as I see your lovely faces, so many people I know, making friends with so many new people from all over the country and from the States. And now and then I even have a friend come from France, and you know, close personal friends and my cousin, you know, like it's really pretty extraordinary during these times to be able to, for me, to draw together all these people and see you all the time. So one of the things that I wanted to say is about Jennifer Robson and that event, which so many of you attended, and I really do thank you for coming and for supporting the event. She is, just as you saw and heard her, an open and generous and lovely person. And she sent a message, and this is what she said. I meant to say this during our chat, but of course forgot. If anyone would like a signed book plate, they only need to visit my website and fill in the form, and I'll send one along, no charge, of course. So please do go to her website if you want a book plate, but even just to see more information about Jennifer, if you're interested, she has a terrific website. So do check that out. And again, a thanks to Anne Freeman, if you're here this week, thank you for sponsoring that event. So for whatever reason, I didn't read my usual 3 books over 2 weeks. I only read 2. And maybe the reason was that we all got a little heavy-hearted with the further lockdowns here in Ontario, and maybe it was just a particularly busy time. But that gives me a moment to give you some bits of publishing news, which I think are very interesting. And one of them is once again about someone from publishing who has written what may become another best-selling book. It hasn't been published yet. So here's a book that you can watch out for. And it was written by the Vice President and Editorial Director of Simon & Schuster Canada, a woman I know, Nita Pronovost, and her book is called The Maid. And rights for it have already been acquired in 17 languages across 20 countries. And it's been described as a fresh take on the cozy mystery genre. And her main character is a maid in a large hotel whose name is Molly, and the hotel is the Regency Grand. And, you know, sort of every day is like the day before for Molly until one day she discovers the dead body of an infamous wealthy guest in one of the rooms. And she has to become an amateur detective to clear her own name and defend her innocence. A kind of plot that is cozily familiar to us and that many of us love. So the author's name is Nita Pronovost, and she's writing under the pen name of Nita Prose, and I'm not sure when the book is going to be published yet. She finished writing it in March, and then of course felt like somewhat self-conscious, as people in publishing do. You know, they would have kept it a bit of a secret that they're writing this book. And but she decided to approach her friend, Nicole Winstanley, who is now the publisher of Penguin Books. And Nicole just went crazy over this book. And now, as I said, rights acquired in 17 languages, you know, just incredible. And in the publishing industry, we have a way of approaching books and pitching them to the media and to booksellers and to readers. And that is, we try to think about comparable titles, and we call them comps, actually. And so Nita was very aware of this, and she's also always thinking about how a manuscript might fit a specific genre or how a story might bend that genre a little. So for her own novel, she imagined mixing the misfit character trope. And she thought specifically, she was inspired by Gail Honeyman's Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, which I know some of you have read. And if you haven't, I will include it on my list just so that I encourage you to read it. It's a terrifically enjoyable novel. So she wanted to combine that with a contemporary locked room mystery inspired by the work of the UK thriller writer Ruth Ware, W-A-R-E, also an amazing writer. And she wanted to add a touch of the film Knives Out, and therefore of the board game Clue, and she says that makes up The Maid. Universal Studios snapped up the film rights, and Florence Pugh is going to star in the film. So that's pretty exciting news. And the next thing I wanted to tell you about, it's due to be released. Thank you very much, Jennifer. January 4th, 2022. So we have that to look forward to in the new year. Long time away yet, but I think it's going to be a really good book. And I will beg my friends at Simon & Schuster for an advanced copy. Well, they're not the publishers. I will bother Nicole Winstanley for my advanced copy. Okay, so I don't know if many of you there are on TikTok. I'm not. I've actually never even looked at it, and I should. But welcome to Book Talk, T-O-K. TikTok's influence is now selling thousands of books. Some enthusiastic readers, usually in their teens and their 20s, are posting videos of themselves reading or recommending novels. And occasionally they sob into the camera after a particularly devastating ending. The director of books at Barnes & Noble told the New York Times, and he says, it becomes this very emotional 45-second video that people immediately connect with. We haven't seen these types of crazy sales. I mean, tens of thousands of copies a month with other social media formats. So this is just part of the incredible rise of influencers in social media, such a real phenomenon. And it's very interesting that that's happened with TikTok. And here's some news that I know you all will appreciate and agree with the prestigious National Book Critics Award for Fiction was given to Maggie O'Farrell's Hamnet, or as we titled it in Canada, Hamnet and Judith, a book we talked about here. And I know that many of you enjoyed, and if you haven't gotten to it yet, I encourage you to. It's an extraordinary novel about Shakespeare, his wife, and his children. So my first novel that I'm going to talk about is The Tunnel by Ab Yehoshua. So a little bit about Yehoshua for those of you who have never read him. So Abraham Yehoshua is 84 years old and still writing. The New York Times calls him the Faulkner of Israel. Avraham Buli Yehoshua was born to a fifth-generation Jerusalem family of Sephardi origin. His father, Yaakov Yehoshua, was a scholar and author specializing in the history of Jerusalem. His mother, Malka Rosilio, immigrated from Morocco in 1932, and he grew up in Jerusalem. Yehoshua served as a paratrooper in the Israeli army and then studied literature and philosophy at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and went on to teach. And from 1963 to 67, he taught in Paris and served as the General Secretary of the World Union of Jewish Students. I never knew there was such a thing. And since 1972, I don't know if he is still doing so, but he might be, he has taught comparative Hebrew literature at the University of Haifa. Yehoshua was married to Rivka, a clinical psychologist and psychoanalyst, until her death in 2016. They have a daughter, 2 sons, and 6 grandchildren. And I can tell you that one of the very best things about The Tunnel, and it is a completely wonderful thing, is the depiction of the beautiful and touchingly real portrayal of a long and happy marriage that is in that book. Forgive my pronunciation, Yehoshua's first book was a collection of short stories, and it was published in 1962. He became a prominent figure in the new wave generation of Israeli writers, and his best known novel probably is Mr. Manny. He is the author of 11 novels, 3 books of short stories, 4 plays, and 4 collections of essays. And his work has been translated and published in 28 countries, and many have been adopted for film, television, theater, and opera. Yehoshua was criticized by the American Jewish community for his famous statement that, quote, a full Jewish life could only be had in the Jewish state. He claimed that Jews elsewhere were only, quote, playing with Judaism. And further, quoting here, diaspora Judaism is masturbation. In Israel, he told the Jerusalem Post, it is living in Israel is the only real thing. I've only read one other novel by him, but I'm so glad I picked up this one. On a political level, it's about one of his great obsessions, the Israeli-Palestinian relationship. And it's very well treated and absolutely intriguing the way he handles that plot line in the novel. But on a personal level, and to me, this is the really powerful part of the book, it is about marriage, work, and dementia, or the fear of dementia. The novel is about Zvi Luria. He's in his 70s. He's a retired road engineer living in Tel Aviv. At his wife Dina's urging, after some somewhat alarming incidents, they go to a neurologist, and the neurologist does find mild degeneration in his frontal lobe, but encourages Luria to fight back against the incipient dementia, and he calls it the spirit versus the brain. The doctor urges him not to run away from life, and he encourages the couple to intensify their intimate relations. Dina finds she really wants to make sure he keeps active. And so she finds for him an unpaid job building a road inside the famed, alongside a younger engineer, inside the famed Raymond crater in the Negev desert. Luria, who has constructed other successful tunnels in the past, suggests one for this project. And you'll find out the reasons why as you read, but the tunnel will, in fact, conceal something. Not an army installation, as I understand might be expected, but people living on top of a hill in the area amid some Nabatean ruins is a Palestinian teacher with his two adult children, a son and a daughter, and their backstory is fascinating. The New York Times Review says, it's hard not to read the atrophy in Zvi's frontal lobe as a kind of metaphor for the current stagnation of Israeli society. Years of near constant violence, not to mention multiple terms of Benjamin Netanyahu, would exhaust anybody. And of course, the concept of a tunnel is a metaphor for many things. There is so much life affirmation in this novel. There's humor, and there's love, and there's respect. There's the value of work and the belief in good outcomes. I'll quote again from the Times Review. The critic said, I found great beauty, not answers, in Zvi's essential human decency. Rather than retreat inward and hide, he chooses, yes, to live. So this is a book that I'm going to be offering for my book clubs next year because there's so much to talk about, and it's just a terrific novel. So the next book I'm going to talk about is With Thanks to Keith Oatley for suggesting it, a fascinating crime novel, and it's called The Chestnut Man, and the author is Soren Sveistrup. I'm not sure how many of you might have seen the sensational, really sensational television series, The Killing. It first appeared in Danish, but then it was developed for American TV and appeared 2011 to 2014 with an absolutely stellar cast. The Danish writer Soren Sveistrup created that series and wrote the screenplay, and if it's still showing, I highly recommend it. This is Sveistrup's first novel and already considered a classic of Nordic noir. But this comes with a big warning. There is some terrible and brutal violence in this thriller. It is also over 500 pages long, but never was I bored, only totally riveted. And since I was watching Borgen at the same time as I was reading this, I was steeped in the Danish atmosphere and politics. So a little digression here to just mention to Borgen, B-O-R-G-E-N, just mention that. For those of you who might not have seen it on, I think it's on Netflix, it's a stunningly intelligent and very moving drama from Denmark about a woman prime minister. And actually it does bear some relationships to this novel. But back to The Chestnut Man. A woman is found murdered and mutilated. Near the body is a simple doll made out of chestnuts. Quite spooky, actually. The detective team who are investigating are two people, the haunted and slovenly Mark Hess and the efficient Naya Tulin. More such murders follow, all with the Chestnut Men. And the duo are fighting against time and their own managers to solve the case before there are even more murders, and they can see that that is inevitable. Hess has returned to his old stomping grounds in Copenhagen after burning bridges at Europol, while Tulin counts down the days until her transfer out of homicide. But both, with the help of a forensic scientist, become obsessed with the case. Fingerprints found on the Chestnut Man dolls belong to Christine Hartung, the missing daughter presumed dead of a prominent figure in the Danish government. Can Christine still be alive? How are the victims connected? And could they be connected with the Parliamentary Minister of Social Services? Although some of the developments and clues could feel like red herrings, it is all of a piece, combining social commentary with strong plotting and memorable characters in both the cops and the suspects. The suspense gets pretty excruciating by the time one reaches the end of the story, where much is revealed and even more is sacrificed. The Chestnut Man is already in development as a Netflix series. So those are my two books for today. And now over to all of you. And my goodness, there are a lot of you today. Welcome, everybody. We have 96 people. So that's extraordinary. I think it's probably, we're all feeling a little down due to further lockdowns and we need our good books. So I'm going to start at this first. I know that you don't have the same screens as I do, but I will go through every screen. So anybody who, Charlotte Haber raised her hand. That's a great idea if you figure out how to raise your hand. Charlotte, unmute yourself and let's hear from you.
I just want to comment a little further on Yehoshua. I've never forgotten him talking in Toronto. I think it was at Holy Blossom. And the one thing that he said, I've never forgotten. He said, diaspora Jews are hoteling in their countries. In other words, we live as guests, for example, in Canada. And anytime somebody wants us to leave, they can tell us to leave. And that stayed with me forever.
Yes, I think, you know, it's part of a certain generational feeling for sure. You know, and I understand it. I myself am so loyal to Canada. Oh my goodness, I love our country. And the more that we need to rely upon our medical services, and not just for COVID, but for everything that we undergo, from, you know, cataract surgery to heart surgery. We just live in such an incredible country. And I know Israel has a lot of that too, but I love Canada and I love Israel. I love them both. And Dublin.
Hi, everyone, and thanks again, Cynthia, for that wonderful session with Jennifer last week. I absolutely loved it because I love historical fiction. And I wanted to thank whoever it was who recommended this book, The Last Garden of England. I'm about halfway through, and I love this book. I love the three stories taking place in three different times, but in basically the same place. And it's a perfect spring book because it's about gardens and things growing and planning. And I'm looking at my own garden in a whole different way. What can I tear down? What can I build? So thanks again. I love this book. It's by Julia Kelly, The Last Garden of England.
Thank you, Anne. Mimi.
Yes, I just wanted to say, when you said the mystery story has a lot of violence, can it be worse than Joe Nesbo?
It is very Joe Nesbo-like.
Very Joe Nesbo-like. Okay, I just finished the new Donna Leone.
Oh, yay! I've downloaded it. So is it a good one?
It's well, you know, there's nobody who captures Venice and certain elements better than she does. I don't think it's a wonderful mystery story, but it's a wonderful, wonderful story. It's marvelous. I loved it.
Thank you, Mimi. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, I'm going to go on to my next screen. Sue-Ann.
Okay, yes, I'm muted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
I just downloaded 2 nonfictions and I'm already about halfway through one of them. I don't know if it's one you've mentioned before. I don't think so. I missed last time's. The Empathy Diaries by Sherry Turkle. She was.
Suzanne, I depend on you and others to talk about the nonfiction books. So I'm glad you bring them. I only do fiction. So please
Perfect.
go ahead and recommend.
Okay, the Sherry Turkle, The Empathy Diaries, is like a Neil Simon play about his upbringing in Brighton Beach meets the philosopher Jacques Lacan. She's a scientist. She's worked all her life on the issue of how technology affects us inside in our relationships with other people. And in this, she marries her family story, which is quite bizarre, with this intellectual progression, trying to figure out how you create empathy. Her father quite clearly was someone who had absolutely none. She didn't see him from the time she was about 18 months till adulthood, except for the very occasional visit. It's a really interesting book. And what fascinates me is this schmaltzy Jewish upbringing in a female-dominated household, allied with these extremely sophisticated ideas. And the other, for people who loved Say Nothing by Patrick, I always get it out of order, Patrick Radden Keefe. He has a new one about the Sadler family, and it deals not so much with Purdue Pharmaceuticals and what happened with the opiates, but with the family history that leads them into this lack of a central moral sense. He's a wonderful writer. I read some of the work on this that he was doing that led to the book in the New Yorker. And I have absolute faith it will be a wonderful book because he's always wonderful. And that's all I have to say. And I apologize for my hair.
Oh, well, you might notice that I did have a haircut. Finally. Yeah.
Ooh, you lucky girl.
Oh my goodness, Allison Bond, I just saw you there. Yay, thank you for coming, my friend from New York. How lovely to see you. Also from the publishing world, Allison, say hello.
Hello there. And I just want to add one comment on Yehoshua, whom I met in Paris because I was working with Kalman Levy, who's one of the very distinguished old Jewish publishers in Paris. And they'd been publishing Yehoshua since the very beginning. And I'd gone over from Frankfurt and my publisher there said, oh, we're having lunch with a very interesting Israeli writer. I loved him. He was the most humanistic writer. This is probably 18 years ago. And he's published in the United States, of course, by Harcourt Brace. But he was a very delightful, amusing man. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. You can just imagine from his writing that he would be lovely.
Yes.
And, you know, it's making me wonder if he's willing to do a Zoom appearance. And, you know, all you can do is try, right? Wouldn't it be right? So
you can always ask, he can always say no.
Yep, that's right. So I think I'm going to give it a little try because I would love to have him.
Okay.
Thank you for that. And thank you to Jennifer, who tells us what I did not know, that Donna Leon no longer lives in Venice and has moved to Switzerland. Wow, that's a change. I'm going to look that up. Okay, who else has something to tell us or suggest? I'm going to go to my next screen. All right, one last screen. Okay, so since I don't see anybody, there may be someone. Now's the moment where you just kind of, oh, Denise Gordon. I see, oh, and now I see everybody's hands up. Okay, Denise.
Hi, I have to apologize. I've been on a hiatus. I have been working and I'm so happy to have a break this week.
I'm glad you've been working and I noticed that you were back. Thank you.
And that's very kind. Thank you. So I have been reading many things, lots of stuff, but what I'm recently reading, a couple of things that may have already been mentioned, but I want to say yes to, is the Isabel Allende book, A Long Petal of the Sea, which is so interesting given part of the work that I do. about a refugee family and how they leave Civil War Spain to go to Chile, only to then leave again to have to go to Venezuela, and how it's a mind map of and a physical map of what it is like to be a refugee and rebuild your life, with the counterpoint of politics, of relationships with family, and reinvention. I think the writing is very beautiful, and I'm not finished it completely, but I am enjoying it a great deal. So that is something that is very special. Another book that probably many you have mentioned before, but I am actually listening to as an audio and I'm finding very powerful, is Bernardine Evarista's Girl, Woman, Other. And it is, I like to read books, but then sometimes I will listen to them as an audio. And it is the book of Black women told by Black women, and with Black women's voices, and dialects and accents, telling the story, which creates an emphasis on language that is so beautiful. And I'm enjoying it, written almost like separate little novellas of people's experiences. And it's very beautiful. So those are two books that I'm going through simultaneously and enjoying a great deal. And I guess I can say one more, which is totally different. And it's a novel by Laura Prescott, The Secrets We Kept. And I've also read that as a book on tape, and as I'm walking, about how the power of a novel can resurface and create powerful political counterpoints to a people, and smuggling pre-CIA women who are very educated, who work in the CIA as, or what will be the CIA as typists, but they are way more clever than typists. And some of them actually end up being kind of spies. And it's kind of a lark of a book, but it is a counterpoint, and it tells, I think it tells a fair picture of what were expected of women of the era, and how they rose above and beyond and actually had their own insights and contributions. But again, with the backplay of how to smuggle Dr. Zhivago back into the USSR. So it's an interesting read, and it was a great read while I'm walking, aimlessly with my dog, as the counterpoint activity in our lives these days.
Denise, thank you for all of your suggestions. And we all need some escapist literature. Oddly, I tend to escape through mysteries, but now and then I just read something light and highly enjoyable. And I think we need that. Jennifer Mulvin, you have your hand up.
Oh, hey, hi, everybody. Thank you. Happy birthday, Cynthia. Thank you for your discussion and for everybody's books. I just wanted to put in a good word for, our classic literature. I just love Anthony Trollope. So I just wanted to say, if you have volumes that you have neglected to get to, pick them up. And then the other thing was, let's jump a couple of 100 years forward. Who's read Jasper Ford? He's wonderful. He writes in a kind of a dystopian world, but par for our group, it's a culture that loves literature, lives for literature. And so, for instance, the plot of one of his books is a magician of sorts finds a way to steal characters out of a book. And the lead investigator that he puts in every one of his novels is very upset by this, because her favorite book is Jane Eyre, and that is the character that this bad guy is taken out of the book and doing who knows what. Anyway, so Jasper Ford with 2 F's,
Yeah.
F-F-O-R-D-E. Thanks so much again.
Jennifer, thank you for those contributions. Ford is so much fun. Okay, if anybody else wants to say something, just yell. Anybody else? Unmute. Oh, Barbara.
I just want to ask you, because classics have now been mentioned. I just reread David Copperfield because I thought it might be metafiction. Is it metafiction because it tells the story of, yes? Thank you.
Okay. It is. And metafiction is really old. Like it started, you know, it started, I mean, Don Quixote would be considered metafiction, I think.
Okay,
Like,
thank you.
so yes, as long as it is a writer writing about writing, as David Copperfield partially is, yes. Maxanne, lovely to see you. Maxanne, unmute yourself.
Lovely to see you and happy birthday. And Jennifer, since you mentioned Anthony Trollope, my son has become a book collector, and he discovered Frances Trollope, who was Anthony Trollope's mother. And she was the most amazing woman who traveled all over the United States in 1832 and wrote about it. And some of the things she wrote about explain the United States today. It's
That's
amazing what she saw. I don't have the name of the book at hand, but I'll find it for next week. But if you're looking for an unknown woman, a totally forgotten, wonderful woman, I recommend this book to you.
Oh, wonderful. And thank your son too. My goodness, I'll write it down.
Charlotte, your hand still up from before, or do you have a new comment? Okay. Again, anybody just shout out, and if not, no other comments. Toby, is that your hand up?
Yeah.
Toby, go ahead.
I read a very compelling play called The Whipping Man. Takes place 5 days after the surrender of the Confederate forces in a Jewish Confederate home in Richmond, Virginia. And there's 3 characters, two slaves and the son of the owner of the house, and they're all Jewish. And there's a Seder in the middle of it. Fascinating.
Wow. Toby, good for you. It's a play, and you read the play?
It's a play. Yeah, The Whipping Man.
Yeah, good. Thank you so much. Okay, everybody, I think this is goodbye. Naomi, if you could stay on for a minute, I want a word with you if you don't mind. And everybody else, thank you for your birthday wishes, and see you in 2 weeks. Big thank you again to Sharon for sponsorship. And see you. Good reading, everybody. Good reading.
Bye. And to you, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Cynthia.
Thank you. Naomi, are you there?